Nasa was a lonely, rizzless bum who looked like a character from Stranger Things and was living a miserable life until he was almost isekaid by Truck-kun. However, he is luckily saved by a hot chick who forces him to marry her and smash her. But before that happened, on the day he was born, his parents sadly stared down at him in the cradle as they realized that their new baby was ugly as hell and his head was so round and big like yours, so they decided to call him Nasa. Over the years while growing up, everybody clowned him because of his dumb name. It became so frustrating for this boy that he decided to study hard to become someone people would respect. He tried growing some muscles by doing some push-ups but realized the weight of his watermelon head was pushing him down instead. When he finally got to middle school, he told his useless teacher that he aspired to attend the country's best university. Still, the teacher told him he needed to have the brain of Einstein, and considering his deadbeat parents' broke status, it was impossible. But our guy dramatically told her his name was Nasa, which meant there was no limitation to his dream. The teacher told him to reconsider his dream and choose a backup university. But Nasa walked out, saying nothing would stop him. Later that evening, while walking home, he stared at his exam sheet and realized he had scored A's again. He muttered to himself happily that even life was aligned with his dream. Little did our useless MC know life was a two-timing bitch, because just then, he sighted the most pretty girl in the world on the other side of the road. At that moment, our determined boy let his guard down because all he wanted was an opportunity to get her name. So to do that, he put on his simp cap and began to cross the road without thinking. In that instant, he was hit by a truck-kun that never misses. This boy lay on the ground with blood spilt everywhere, and all he could think about was dying without getting to know the name of the hot girl. Just then, he looked up to find the pretty girl with blood on her face staring down at him. The truck driver immediately arrived, asking if he was okay. So with that, the girl stood to leave, not without asking the truck driver to take Nasa to the hospital. But the driver pointed out that she would also need the attention of the doctor because she took the brunt of the hit when she got in front of Nasa to save him. However, the girl began to leave, and seeing her leave under the glowing moon, Nasa slowly began to pass out. Shortly afterwards, the truck driver started to call an ambulance, but suddenly Nasa stood up like a horror movie villain, scaring the shit out of the truck driver. He told the driver he was determined to find the girl because she was too pretty to just let go. With that, our boy ran off into the night with sonic speed to catch up with the girl. After running for a while, he finally caught up with her while she was sitting at a bus stop. Seeing him, the girl was surprised that the guy had chased after her despite his life hanging by a thread. That instant, the simp lord desperately dropped a cringy pickup line, asking if she was a star because he was Nasa and would love to study her gravitational pull. Hearing this, the girl was impressed, so she asked him to sit. She used her handkerchief to clean the blood on his face and then gave him her coat. She then stood up, telling him she would call an ambulance because, due to his injuries, he could actually die at any moment. But the ugly gorilla, in a desperate attempt to talk to her, crashed to the ground, so the girl informed him that his legs were broken. She opened the door, telling him she would call the ambulance and asking him not to attempt to move again. Just then, Nasa's consciousness began to fade, but he was determined, so he moved towards her. He told the girl that she looked just like Princess Kaguya in the children's tale, the beloved princess who was loved by many but had to return to the moon. Nasa told the girl that since they might never meet again, he would fight for a chance to be with her. With all the courage in the world, he told her he loved her and would love to go on a date with her. However, the girl told him they could only be together if he married her, to which the total idiot with nothing but wind in his brain agreed instantly and then passed out. Days later, he finally woke up in the hospital and was confined to a wheelchair, but the thought of the pretty girl was always on his mind. He instantly went into a spiral of depression at not knowing the girl's name and never seeing her again. Even though he finally achieved the top score in his class, he decided not to attend the top university. He then took a service job in the hope of meeting the girl again, but that never happened. Time passed and Nasa finally turned 18, but instead of celebrating his birthday, he was depressed and stayed in his room all day. However, that day, his doorbell rang, and as he opened the door, his brain short-circuited when he saw the girl standing before him. The girl introduced herself as Chitose, so our boy told her "Me casa su casa." With that, she entered his apartment, and as she was having tea, she showed him their marriage certificate and asked him to sign it. Nasa immediately went hysterical because he had never thought she was serious about the whole marriage thingy. However, Chitose told him that if he didn't want to sign, it would be fine. So he quickly grabbed the paper and signed it faster than a ninja on a foot race. After that, she told him she was a good judge of character and believed he would take good care of her. With that settled, The Yunjins headed for the marriage ward office to legally bind it. On the way there, Nasa realized Chitose was the only human on Earth who had never made fun of his name. However, Chitose informed him that Nasa had many scientists and engineers who worked together to fulfill the dream of humanity traveling to space. So his name wasn't funny at all. It was a fantastic name that meant any dream could be achieved. Soon after, they finally arrived at the office, and the old man was surprised to see a young couple getting married because he was an old, ugly bachelor who no one wanted. However, he signed the document and handed them a flower as a gift. Later on that night, Nasa paced around in his room, still shocked that he was now a married man. He wasn't mentally ready to start living with someone, and his apartment could only fit one soul. Then, there was a really serious problem with where his new waifu would sleep since he had just one bed. With that in mind, he thought about purchasing a new bed, but it was pretty late, and the delivery wouldn't arrive until the next day, and then began to analyze the different positions that could fit both of them on the bed. Just then, Chitose popped out of nowhere, asking why he was talking to himself like a madman, which gave Nasa a total shock. She then showed him her briefcase telling him she was there to commence their couple life. With that, Nasa moved to make her coffee, and she revealed that she didn't have any home to return to. So they would spend every night together from then onwards, which nearly paralyzed Nasa's nervous system. However, she suddenly realized that his bed was too small to fit even a rat, so she suggested she spend the night at a hotel instead. Hearing this, Nasa became depressed, but Chitose assured him that even though his living condition was worse than that of a homeless beggar, she was his wife and would never leave him. Hearing this, Nasa stared at her and pondered why on earth a pretty chick would want to spend the rest of her life with a horrendous loser like him since he hadn't even done anything for her. So he asked Chitose why she had decided to marry him since they hardly knew each other. Chitose replied that the question was pretty silly and then asked why he had agreed to marry her without knowing her. Nasa responded that it was because he loved her, so Chitose answered that she also wouldn't marry someone she didn't love. After that, she stood up to leave for the hotel. But before she got too far, Nasa chased after her and begged her to stay, promising he would do anything in his power to buy a footin even though he had to walk to the end of the earth. However, deep down, our boy had a feeling that if the chick left, she might never return to his crappy apartment. Chitose agreed, and they headed for the nearest convenience store to get a mattress and a footin. Inside the store, Chitose was surprised that her boy husband was pretty knowledgeable about the different types of futons, even more than the manufacturers. Following that, Chitose grabbed his hands, and the miserable simp jizzed from all things, and they spent hours shopping together. Hours later, they returned to the apartment, and Chitose found the mattress was pretty comfy. Nasa, on the other hand, still couldn't believe that a hot baddie was sleeping in his room. Just then, Chitose searched for the bathroom, but realized the young man didn't have any, so Nasa informed her that he used the local bathroom every morning, so she suggested they go for a stroll to get the stuffs at the convenience store. Later on, Nasa arrived with a bag of female supplies, so Chitose changed into the pajamas. Seeing her, Nasa had a spit take when he realized this girl was pretty even with pajamas on. So later on that night, Nasa turned off the light, and they both went to bed. However, Nasa found it difficult to get any sleep knowing the girl was sleeping just close to him for the first time in his pathetic life, making his heart pound faster than a hyena on steroids. Suddenly, he realized that his wife was a restless sleeper, so he tucked her back into bed and thought of giving her a goodnight kiss, but he felt the kiss wouldn't be perfect since she was not conscious. Just then, Chitose stood up and sleepwalked into the kitchen to drink water, and when she returned, she took his blanket, leaving him cold till the next morning. The next morning, Nasa woke up thinking all that had happened the previous day was all a dream, but when he saw Chitose behaving like she had no memory of what happened last night, he realized he was really married for real. Just then, Chitose began to take off her pajamas, so he quickly screamed for her to remember she wasn't alone. Then he retreated to the other room to give her some privacy. When he returned, he found Chitose adorned in an apron, asking why Nasa had been referring to her in a formal way since they were married. So they both decided to give each other pet names, which made Chitose blush, causing her face to turn red. Later, Chitose found Nasa's refrigerator organized and full of food. She was surprised the guy could actually cook, unlike most Gen Z dudes that live on takeout. Nasa informed her that he had done a scientific analysis on the nutritional needs of an adult male and found out that eating hot pot every day was the way to a healthy lifestyle. However, Chitose remarked that cooking wasn't chemistry and then pulled a culinary move like a Michelin chef. She then made an Instagram-worthy meal, which was far better than Nasa's regular hot pot. So Nasa tasted the food and realized the girl could actually cook. Chitose then revealed that she could make just about anything as long as she had ingredients. After eating, Chitose asked about the bathhouse, and after hearing this, the pig realized he hadn't bathed for days. However, just then, he thought about how wonderful it would be to see Chitose without any plot armor. Since Nasa only had the basic bathing supplies, they went to the convenience store to get a skin moisturizer and toner. Seeing all the bathing stuffs, the monkey was surprised because he only used soap. Finally, they arrived at the bathhouse where they met Kaname, one of Nasa's classmates. Kaname was shocked to see Nasa with a girl because she had initially thought his meat would be donated to the museum for lack of usage. Following that, Nasa then introduced Kaname to Chitose. Kaname had been managing the bathhouse for years to help out her family. On the other hand, Kaname suddenly noticed the weird chemistry between Nasa and Chitose and then asked if they were dating. Nasa then mentioned that they were married, which stopped the girl's heart for a minute, causing her to faint. However, she congratulated them on their marriage and told them they could bath for free as a gift from the house. With that, Chitose then entered to take a bath, and as Nasa trudged along, Kaname stopped him with her broom. She told him she had never believed in her wildest imagination that he would get married because she had actually thought he would remain single till he was 70 and become a wizard. She then asked when the marriage ceremony would be held, but Nasa awkwardly mentioned that marriage ceremonies are just a waste of money these days. Hearing this, Kaname criticized him for not being man enough to make his woman happy. She told him he had a responsibility to make her happy, so Nasa, with a burning eye, vowed to make his wife happy for the rest of his life because he loved her. That moment, Chitose overheard him and was a bit embarrassed the guy was shouting love on the street like a maniac. Later on, Nasa had his bath and thought just about how lucky he would be if he could just see his wife in her full glory. Suddenly, Kaname popped out of nowhere and teased him for having a very, very tiny willy. On the other hand, Chitose entered the bathing parlor to find it empty, so she decided to enjoy some peaceful bath time alone. However, her alone time was interrupted by Aya, the elder sister of the family, who accidentally entered the bath and then apologized repeatedly like a crazed person for intruding on her privacy. Aya then offered to help wash Chitose back as a way to show she was truly sorry. As she washed Chitose back, she commented on her smooth skin, which she likened to silk and then an iPhone X, but she apologized almost immediately for comparing her skin to silly things. Following that, they both introduced themselves, and Aya was stunned when she realized that Chitose had Nasa's surname. She asked if Chitose was a relative or family member, to which Chitose lied by saying that she was his younger sister. Several hours later, Nasa dreamt about the night he met Chitose. However, he was jerked out of slumberland when Chitose woke him up that she was done bathing. Aya then approached them, telling Nasa that she had met his younger sister, which confused him. However, he decided to play along that Chitose was truly his younger sister. On the other hand, Chitose asked Aya how she was acquainted with Nasa, and she explained that they were classmates. She added that her grandfather, who handled the business, had died years ago, causing the business to take a turn for the worse. But thanks to Nasa, who used his marketing skills he learned from YouTube to help revive their business. Shortly afterwards, Nasa and Chitose walked back to the house. Chitose then asked Nasa if Aya was pretty, and the clueless idiot yapped on and on about how super cute the girl was, not knowing it made Chitose really jealous. Just then, they passed through a marriage ceremony going on while walking, and then Nasa noticed Chitose having a terrible mood swing, so he remembered Kaname's words about how a marriage without ceremony sucked. With that, he assumed Chitose was sad because they hadn't done their marriage ceremony when all the girl wanted was for him to just compliment her as he did Aya. She informed him that she just wanted to be pretty, so then the foolish donkey handed her a key to the apartment and bolted, telling her he would make the impossible possible. Seeing him run, Chitose was confused, wondering how hard it was for him to just tell her she was pretty. Few minutes later, Chitose was back in the apartment and was lonely. She wondered when Nasa would be back, so in the meantime, she decided to flex her domestic muscle by cleaning the house, but she realized that the house was already spotless, so she thought of cleaning the closet and under the bed because people hardly clean those places. However, she restrained herself because she assumed the disgusting pair of a husband might have some thirsty, steamy magazines hidden inside. Just then, she heard the doorbell ring, and when she opened the door, she was surprised to see the yellow-haired girl named Chitose. Chitose immediately made fun of the crappy apartment she was staying, saying that Kennel was far better, so Chitose shut the door on her ugly face. With that, the yellow-haired dwarf began to bang on the door, saying she had come to pick her up since her sudden disappearance had made the grandmother so worried. Chitose then informed her she was married now and wouldn't be going back ever, and then shut the door of the apartment again. With that, Chitose left the apartment very sad and sobbed on the staircase. Just then, Nasa found her crying on the staircase and started to comfort her. Chitose explained her problem to him of a family member who escaped. She described Chitose as a free-flying glass butterfly who easily got hurt and would disappear the second you let her out of sight. Just then, Chitose interrupted their conversation when she heard Nasa's voice. That moment, Chitose immediately put two and two together and became furious as hell when she realized that the dude she had been talking to all this while was the idiot who married Chitose. Nasa then tried to be the cool dude to actually convince her he was the right man for Chitose, but she kidnapped him without a second thought and drove him all the way to a mansion. Inside the mansion, she told Nasa that she would frame him up using implicating pictures of him. She then called on two hot maids, Charlotte and Aurora, and asked them to get freaky photos of Nasa. Hearing this, Charlotte didn't waste any time stripping, but Chitose covered her up instantly, telling her to chill. However, while they were talking, Nasa used the opportunity to run off and then began to examine his surroundings. He suddenly found himself inside a room, and as he sniffed the atmosphere like a police dog, he realized the room should be Chitose's. Just then, he sighted a rock on display, recognized its shape and composition, and then realized it was a moon rock. He wondered how Chitose had managed to get a hold of a moon rock since they were artifacts that should be in a museum. Just then, Charlotte stormed into the room wielding a giant sword that could cut you in the firmament of heaven and swore to annihilate him for trespassing. However, in an attempt to separate Nasa's ugly head from his body, she accidentally hit the glass casing of the moon rock, almost breaking it and causing the nitrogen to leak. However, Nasa displayed his electrician skill and fixed it. A few minutes later, Chitose revealed that it was Chitose's gift to the family and was shocked when she realized that the guy knew little about his wife. Just then, she remembered how Chitose had actually saved her while mountain climbing when they were little and was pissed because she felt Chitose shouldn't have married this dumb. Without wasting time, Charlotte commenced the infidelity plan, while Aurora took pictures and photoshopped it perfectly with the speed of lightning. Seeing the photoshopped pictures, Nasa was shocked that the girl had fabricated the pictures so fast. That moment, Chitose somehow appeared inside the room and found the pictures. Chitose immediately told her to divorce the terrible cheating man, but Chitose asked for a private conversation with her husband, and unknowingly, it was a ploy to escape. On getting outside the room, Nasa apologized for the picture and explained he was framed, but Chitose told him she was not dumb because she could tell the picture was photoshopped. On the other hand, Chitose and her evil maids finally realized they had been scammed and tried stopping them. At the same time, Chitose revealed a hidden passageway that led to an old church. With that, Nasa took advantage of the opportunity to be in a church to propose to her. He professes his undying love to her and then lip-clapped her for the first time. The following day at home, Chitose was in the mood to watch a show on TV, but that was when she realized that her broke husband didn't have any TV. Even worse, the guy knew nothing about movies and TV, making her wonder what he had been doing all his life. So she took it upon herself to give him a passionate TED talk about the importance of TV to the life of an average otaku. Hearing this, Nasa was surprised that his usual laid-back wife was a fiery vixen when it came to movies. So with that, they went TV shopping. Chitose suggested they get a cheap one as she would be happy regardless. Later that day, at the bathhouse, Nasa dramatically informed Kanam that he had proposed to Chitose. Kanam then asked if he bought a ring for the proposal, to which the ugly moron told her he had never thought getting a ring was important. Hearing this, Kanam boiled in anger, telling him that a ring was one of the top 3 things any husband would get for his wife. So while waiting for Chitose to be done with bathing, Nasa watched on TV a couple celebrating their engagement with a diamond ring, so he wondered how much a diamond ring would cost. Later, on their way home, he informed Chitose that he would be going to work that afternoon. They then stopped by a park before heading home and watched the scene silently. That moment, Nasa wondered if Chitose was sad because she would be alone when he headed to work, which led him to conclude that he needed to get the diamond ring so she could remember him anytime he wasn't at home. Following that, they returned home, so Nasa mentioned that he was heading to work, but he became worried that Chitose might be gone when he got back. However, Chitose told him to return on time, and he would surely see her. At work that day, Nasa thought about Chitose and wondered if she was lonely. concluding that getting a ring was the best thing so she would always remember him. After work, he returned home to find that Chitose had already prepared dinner. So while they ate, he suggested they got a diamond engagement ring as a symbol of their love. Hearing this, Chitose was surprised to see him acting so romantic. However, she informed him that they were married and that getting an engagement would be weird. She told him what they needed was a wedding ring, but suddenly realized Nisa was just a brain-dead moron who didn't know the difference. With that, she schooled him on the difference between an engagement ring and a wedding ring. After the lecture, Nisa was more convinced than ever to get a diamond wedding ring. Chitose tried telling him that a diamond ring would cost an arm and a leg, but Nisa was more stubborn than a goat and insisted on getting one. Seeing that her word would never get through his thick skull, she decided it was best he found out himself. So the next day she took him to a diamond ring shop, and Nisa was mortified to find out just how expensive a diamond ring was. The saleswoman revealed that the ring was expensive because they were of the highest quality and it was a lifetime opportunity. With that, Nisa was convinced and was about to spend his parents' gratuity on getting the ring, but Chitose dragged him out of there before he could. She explained that she intended to show him how expensive a diamond ring was and not for him to spend all his family's savings purchasing one. However, seeing that Nisa was adamant on getting the ring, Chitose then took him to a lower quality store. Getting there, Nisa was shocked that the prices were cheap compared to the first shop. But to Chitose, they were still expensive, so they left the store. Nisa then revealed to her that he really needed to get the ring, so anytime they were separated, she would look at the ring and think of him. Hearing this, Chitose was impressed that this guy would go this far for her, so she kissed him on the cheeks. With that, she took him to the cheapest store, and they purchased the cheapest ring available to mankind. However, Nisa was skeptical about the emotional value of the ring since it was very cheap, but Chitose informed him that the price didn't matter. It showed that he really did care for her, and anytime she looked at it, she would be reminded of the fact that he loved her. For several nights, Nisa noticed Chitose's habit of sleepwalking, wandering around clumsily, grabbing water, and then dozing off in random places. One night, she even ended up crawling into his bed. Though embarrassed, Nisa mustered the courage to hug her. Just then, she briefly woke up, kissed him, and then fell asleep on the floor again. Her restless sleeping habits often kept him from sleeping well. So the next morning, he decided that this couldn't continue and that she shouldn't keep ending up on the floor. He figured they needed a bigger bed, but their apartment didn't have room for one. He thought about moving to a bigger place and imagined a home with a living room and a larger TV, excited by the idea. He asked if Chitose would be interested in moving to a bigger apartment, but she liked the coziness of their current place because it kept them close. At the bathhouse, Kanam heard they were thinking about moving and was surprised to learn Chitose was sleeping on the floor. When Nisa explained that Chitose was happy with their setup, Kanam remarked that she'd be mad if her future husband kept her in a small apartment with no bath. That evening, Nisa accidentally walked in on Chitose while she was changing, catching a view of her peaches in 4K flustered. He suggested they move to a bigger place to avoid future awkward moments like this. However, Chitose was concerned about the expense, but Nisa reassured her that a bigger place could also mean a projector for movies and a bookshelf for her film collection. Hearing this idea got her excited since she was a huge movie lover. With that, they decided to start apartment hunting but realized they'd need a guarantor. At that point, Nisa remembered he hadn't yet told his parents about his marriage. So he called his mom, briefly mentioned he was married, and quickly hung up. He explained to Chitose that he'd also told his parents about his accident and how she'd saved him. Since they needed his parents' help with the apartment, they thought it would be a good time for Chitose to meet them. Although nervous about meeting his parents, Nisa soon received texts from his mother, who guessed that he was asking for help with the new apartment, and that was the reason he called. In return, his parents requested a visit from the couple. Since his parents lived in another prefecture, Nisa thought it might be a nice opportunity for a honeymoon too. Chitose then suggested they buy a camera to capture memories of their life together in a photo diary while they journeyed to his parents' home. They started by taking photos of Chitose near a lake, and Nisa discovered he had a knack for photography. The next day, they traveled to Kyoto, snapping photos along the way. Meanwhile, Chitose and her maids had been spying on them and wondered why they were taking the bus instead of the high-speed rail. Determined, they followed the bus in a car. On board, Chitose slept peacefully, while Nisa found the seats uncomfortable but pretended he was fine for her sake. As they rested, Chitose watched them with envy, announcing her determination to break them up. Her frustration only grew as she saw how close Nasa and Chitose had become. On the other hand, Charlotte and Aurora mentioned that they looked sweet together and wondered why Chitose would really want to break up such a nice couple. Chitose silenced their mouths, telling them she was certain they would break up because newlyweds often ran into problems during honeymoon. On getting to a stop, Nasa misplaced his wallet, so he dashed back to the bus to find it. Seeing this, Chitose laughed mischievously because she had never seen such an empty-headed buffon and thought this would definitely get Chitose angry. However, Chitose was cool with his idiotic behavior. Later on, Nasa decided they eat at the food court, but Chitose loudly insisted they try something nice instead of eating at a chain restaurant. So they tried a food spiced with lime, and Nasa took some embarrassing pictures of Chitose, which made her upset. Seeing this, Chitose expected them to break up over the issue. However, they settled with Nasa, telling Chitose that she could eat whatever she liked. So Chitose chose to have melon bread, to which they settled. This made Chitose very angry, so she confronted Chitose, saying she was disappointed in her choice of men and with her acting all lovey-dovey with the donkey like she was some normal girl. Chitose told her she was indeed a normal girl, and just then, a television show crew arrived for some content for a dish. So the couple took advantage of the distraction to escape, avoiding being put on camera. While inside the bus, Chitose pointed out her fears of Nasa's parents not approving of their marriage, but Nasa assured her that he would convince them. On the other hand, Chitose ordered her maids to catch up with the couple that had escaped, but the hungry girls were busy devouring food like starved animals. Hours later, the couple finally arrived in Kyoto, and Nasa was excited to spend the day exploring the city with Chitose. However, Chitose was more interested in visiting Kyoto's bakeries, which sent shockwaves to Nasa's brains because he never expected her to be interested in seeing a bakery when there were over 1,000 bakeries back in Tokyo. He pointed out that the city was full of distinctive shrines, temples, and exciting historical places, but he suddenly realized she was more of a Gen Z who didn't give two shits about history. Although Chitose wasn't particularly interested in historical places, she reluctantly decided to accompany him. Shortly afterwards, Chitose tried on a kimono, and Nasa was awestruck to see her in a kimono, causing his brain to fry. Just then, they once again encountered Chitose and her maids. With that, Nasa then suggested Charlotte and Aurora take Chitose around Kyoto while he and Chitose had a private talk. Once alone, Chitose announced she pretended to be his girlfriend to test if he was truly man enough to have Chitose. Determined to prove himself, Nasa went all out, suggesting they take a rickshaw ride while they talked. Meanwhile, at a cafe, the maids questioned Chitose about her feelings for Nasa and why she had chosen to spend the rest of her life with such a lowly loser. She confessed that she found him cute, and that moment with a flashback, she mentioned that she loved how he had always praised her in the presence of others. At the same time, Nasa took Chitose to a popular dango shop. After this, Chitose demanded to know why he loved Chitose, prompting Nasa to enthusiastically share how cute and pretty Chitose was, which pissed the hell out of the girl. With this, she revealed she knew Chitose better, and Nasa knew absolutely nothing about his so-called wife. She also revealed that Chitose was very athletic, apart from her being cool and collected. Upon saying this, she furiously stormed out, muttering to herself that she never believed Chitose would choose to spend her with a total dweeb who knew absolutely nothing about her when she could have just stayed with her. Just then, Nasa shared how Chitose had saved him from a truck 2 years prior, saying he'd felt destined to be with her ever since. He added that even though he didn't know Chitose as well as she does, he intended on spending his entire life proving their love was real. Later on that day, Chitose asked Nasa if he convinced Chitose to approve of their love. Nasa responded, telling her that Chitose had decided to return to Tokyo for now. With that, the couple boarded a bus and then made their way to Nara to meet Nasa's parents. On the way, Nasa shared that although he grew up in Tokyo, his quirky parents had decided to move to Nara because his father was an archaeologist and his mother loved deer. Chitose then asked if she would be able to get along with his parents because they were complete weirdos. Nasa responded, telling her that he would ensure everything worked out fine. When they finally arrived, they were both nervous about approaching Nasa's parents. However, they tried to cheer each other up, only to spot Nasa's mother, Kanoka, spying on them. With that, they finally entered the house, and Kanoka introduced herself as if she were a mental patient. She then revealed that Nasa's father, Enishi, had been so nervous about meeting them all day that he hadn't moved all day. Later on, they finally get to sit with Nasa's parents, and just then, while they talk, Nasa's weird parents start to have a schizophrenic episode. Suddenly, Enishi insisted that Nasa take a bath, and though Nasa resisted, Tsukasa encouraged him to go so she could talk to his parents alone. Later, after the bath, Tsukasa mentioned having a good with his father but wanted to keep the details a secret. Shortly afterwards, they moved to Nasa's old room, and while they explored it, Kanoka interrupted, asking if they would be spending the night there. Nasa told her yes, and then she reminded him that their bedroom walls weren't soundproof in case of any happy noises during plot development. That night, Nasa awkwardly asked Tsukasa to sleep on his arm, to which she agreed. She moved closer to him, and the pair finished from too much enjoyment. However, just then, his weak arm soon fell asleep, making him uncomfortable. With that, he asked for a goodnight kiss instead before drifting off, which Tsukasa obliged, and they exchanged mouth fluids. The next morning, Tsukasa watched the sunrise and was joined by Enishi, who called her an early riser. Hearing this, she shocked Enishi by calling him father-in-law and nearly gave the old man a heart attack. After that, they exchanged small talk and then went to see Enishi's library, where he was surprised by Tsukasa's ability to read old documents. Just then, Nasa joined them and was equally surprised as he hadn't realized she liked historical documents. Later on, Tsukasa revealed her plan to make Nara enjoyable by taking photos of her husband at old shrines since she wasn't particularly fond of historical places. Following that, they visited Nara's great Buddha statue, and Tsukasa spent a lot of time taking embarrassing selfies of Nasa's ugly face. After this, they toured other historical sites, and Nasa was both shocked and impressed by Tsukasa's knowledge of these historical places, but Tsukasa merely credited this to her good memory. Minutes later, Nasa suggested they took selfies together like every normal couple did, so they took a sweet selfie together, but Tsukasa just assumed the cultured idiot was taking advantage of the slightest opportunity just to touch her plots. Later on, they headed to the site of the Heijo Castle, which was empty as its buildings had been moved to Kyoto. At the empty grounds, Tsukasa felt saddened that so few traces of past residents remained, so she insisted they record videos to keep their memories alive forever. Later that night, Enishi threw himself on the floor, thanked Tsukasa for saving his son's life, and expressed how they could never fully repay her. He then pleaded with her to continue looking after Nasa, and she promised to do her best. Soon it was time to leave, and Tsukasa left behind many funny pictures of Nasa for his parents. Although their trip was short, Tsukasa enjoyed every moment and revealed that she was always at ease when they were together. Several hours later, they returned to Tokyo to discover that their apartment had burnt down. Fortunately, Tsukasa packed most of her belongings in her suitcase. Nasa was delighted that the tree, which was a symbol of their love, had survived, which surprised Tsukasa, who cherished even the smallest details about their relationship. However, Nasa informed Tsukasa not to worry because he was well prepared for emergencies, having set up insurance, stored valuables in a safety deposit box. After this, he suggested that they headed to the bathhouse to cool off steam and plan their next move. As they walked, Tsukasa, impressed with the way Nasa had handled the bad situation. Shortly afterwards, while relaxing at the bathhouse, Nasa thought about moving to a hotel with his wife, but his disgusting cultured mind started having some nasty thoughts. However, just then, Kaname appeared from nowhere. Following that, Kaname suggested they stay at the bathhouse for the meantime until they could find a new place, which excited Nasa, and he agreed. Following that, Kaname showed them around the building where they would be staying. After this, she felt a bit concerned for her sister, Aya, who had a crush on Nasa and was too dumb to realize that Nasa and Tsukasa weren't siblings but a married couple. With that, she approached Aya, telling her that Nasa and Tsukasa would be living with them, which gave Aya a total shock. Kaname then tried to indirectly tell Aya that Nasa and Tsukasa were a couple, but the balloon head just couldn't catch on. Just then, Nasa interrupted their conversation, thanking Aya for accepting them into their home, but the girl still hadn't noticed his wedding ring. Nasa then mentioned introducing Tsukasa to his parents in Nara. Hearing this, Aya almost pieced it together, but this girl certainly wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. Just then, the girl's mother entered, saying she had just spoken with Nasa's wife, which finally activated Aya's brain cells, making her realize Nasa was a married man. With this realization, she was both furious and sad, so her mom consoled her by comparing her sad situation to her own, whose husband had left. On the other hand, Nasa felt bad, but Kaname reassured him, suggesting Aya would be okay and that her own hesitation had prevented her from pursuing him a long time ago. After crying for a few seconds, Aya regained her confidence and told Nasa to take good care of Tsukasa while she pursued her dream of becoming a game streamer. A few days later, Tsukasa mentioned that they were low on clean clothes, and when Nasa offered to do the laundry, she shyly declined, embarrassed at the thought of him handling her underwear. While sorting through their dirty clothes, Nasa took a sniff of Chitose's cloth, only to be caught by Kaname, who called him a filthy, ugly perv. Later, Nasa and Chitose went to the laundromat, where she taught him the proper way to wash clothes since he hadn't been too thorough before. She then confessed to Nasa that she was currently only wearing her tracksuit with no melon cover or peach armor, which nearly choked the life out of the boy. Seizing the rare moment, Nasa snapped a photo of her, feeling it was too good an opportunity to miss. Later that day, Kaname encouraged Nasa to take Chitose shopping to replace the clothes they lost in the fire, hinting that she would lose her baddie appearance if she continued dressing like a homeless person. With that, Nasa thought her words made sense, so he took Chitose to the shopping mall where she tried on various clothes, and eventually, they moved on to buying underwear. Being in the underwear section made him very embarrassed, so Chitose held his hand to help him stay calm, but ultimately, they decided it was better for her to shop alone there. Finally, as they headed home, Nasa asked if he might someday see her in cute underwear, though they quickly dropped the topic because it was too embarrassing to talk about. After enjoying their stay at the bathhouse, Nasa found the room a bit old-fashioned and looked forward to eventually moving out. On the other hand, Chitose prepared dinner for them, which Nasa loved since his family were big fans of fried foods. He found the pork with sauce delicious and expressed his hope to enjoy her cooking for the rest of his life. Just then, Kaname arrived with a muskmelon as a gift, and the couple was impressed by its sweet, heavenly taste, deciding they should find a way to repay Kaname for her kindness. With that, Nasa tried to be romantic by feeding Chitose a piece, and although she was a bit embarrassed, he insisted, hinting that she had also fed him earlier while they traveled, so she agreed and he mouth-fed her. The next day, Nasa's former landlord called and invited him to look at a newly constructed apartment. Kaname, on the other hand, was disappointed by the news, as she found their awkward love story amusing and enjoyed every bit of their stay. However, since the landlord had a good relationship with them, he offered the couple the same rent as before. So later that day, they toured the model home and were amazed by the elegant design, detailed hallways, and views from the high-rise. They were especially impressed with the bath that had a view. Nasa then imagined baths, while Chitose was looking forward to shared bath time. On getting inside the master bedroom, they marveled at the huge bed, far larger than their old futons. So after the tour, as they walked home, Nasa resolved to work hard to afford the rent of the place. But Chitose reassured him that she'd be happy wherever they lived as long as they could make it feel like home. The following day, Kaname shared her routine working at the bathhouse, where she woke up at 5:30 each morning to clean before school. When Chitose volunteered to help, Kaname initially refused, saying she was a guest. However, Chitose insisted, feeling uncomfortable staying there without contributing. Eventually, Kaname allowed her to help, and Chitose discovered that Nasa's inventions had automated much of the cleaning to make the bathhouse more efficient. Kaname then assigned her some hard-to-reach spots, but was impressed by how thoroughly Chitose cleaned. After this, Kaname thanked Chitose for saving Nasa's life, expressing how much she admired him and how he had helped her family. Later that day, Chitose asked Nasa about his favorite food, and surprisingly, it was curry. Hearing this, Chitose then decided to get curry ingredients, and Nasa joined her on the shopping trip. While they were on their way out, they ran into Kaname's mother, who suggested Nasa take his wife to a park for some spicy moments to liven up their marriage, but Nasa was too dense to catch her drift. After that, they continued to the supermarket, and on their walk home, Nasa joked that he felt lucky they weren't a high school couple, or there'd be parents waiting to scold them. Just then, Chitose teased him about accidentally leading them to an abandoned park and playfully asked if he had any cultured thoughts in mind. Upon hearing this, Nasa admitted he only planned to kiss her, but Chitose felt too self-conscious after eating a garlic bun, much to Nasa's disappointment. After that, she admitted she found the park peaceful as if they were the only ones in the world. Suddenly, Nasa hugged Chitose from behind tightly, grabbing her soft melons. Surprised, Chitose admitted that although the hug was a scary one, it still felt nice. Nasa then asked if she was happy to be married to him. She wondered why he was asking such a weird question. However, she responded that she was because being with him brought new experiences, and she learned a lot of new things every day. With that, the two lovebirds then embraced themselves passionately. Days later, Chitose and her maids discovered that Nasa and Chitose's apartment had burnt down. However, just then, Chitose coincidentally passed by the burnt building, so they questioned her about her current living situation. Chitose was horrified when Tsukasa jokingly mentioned that she was living in the local playground now, inside one of the play structures, but when Chitose entered to see how it was humanly possible to live there, Tsukasa managed to escape the horrible girl. Meanwhile, Nasa had been organizing and sorting through the old stuff in their room, when he found an old grilling machine, so he decided to throw a taco party. He then invited Aya and Kaname, but Kaname shared that Aya was still uncomfortable due to the whole marriage stuff. Just then, Chitose burst inside the bathhouse after tracking Tsukasa down. Seeing her, Tsukasa joked that she was living on the bathhouse floor, which the fish brain believed and was greatly concerned. However, Nasa spared the state of her dried brain any further humiliation by explaining they were simply staying in a borrowed room at the inn. With that, Chitose and her maids explored the bathhouse and ended up having a fantastic time. Although Chitose enjoyed the bathhouse's services, she asked why they hadn't stayed at her mansion instead. Tsukasa explained it was because Chitose didn't have a game console. Chitose exclaimed that she'd buy every gaming system just to lure Tsukasa to her mansion, but Aya, who also loved games, got caught in her enthusiasm instead. Later that day, with everyone together, Tsukasa decided to start the taco party. Just then, Aya challenged Tsukasa's cooking skills to see if she was worthy of being Nasa's wife. After that, Aya then challenged her to a Street Fighter match instead. As the game battle began, Nasa revealed he also enjoyed playing games like Minesweeper and Solitaire. At the start of the first round, Nasa quickly lost to Tsukasa, and though Kaname put up a fight, she was also defeated. Charlotte and Aurora then decided to crank the party up a notch and organized a gaming tournament, where Nasa owed the winner a favor provided it was something he could do. With that, Chitose, Aya, and Tsukasa entered the tournament, with Chitose having a devious plan of making Nasa do a handstand naked if she won just to humiliate him. But Aya defeated her flawlessly, and after Chitose demanded a rematch, Aya crushed her again and again in Street Fighter. Tsukasa then played her match, and Chitose revealed that she used to play video games all day. When Tsukasa lost, she joked that she was rusty and demanded a switch to the original version of Street Fighter. Since Aya didn't know how to play the retro version, she quickly lost. As the two continued to play, the rest of the party realized the girls had forgotten about the prize and were playing for their pride instead. On the other hand, Tsukasa and Aya then adjusted to the older controls and ended in a tie after a double knockout, after which they congratulated themselves in the spirit of good sportsmanship. The party then shifted back to making and enjoying tacos, and as Chitose watched Tsukasa cooking happily with Nasa, she started to accept their marriage. The maids began to tease her, asking if she was done plotting her evil against the happy couple, to which she responded that as long as Tsukasa was happy, she was good. After the party, while they washed the dishes, Nasa asked Tsukasa what she would have requested as her favor if she won the tournament, and she gave him a nice kiss. The following day, Nasa learned that the system at work was down, and it seemed to be a pretty serious issue. When Tsukasa asked what was wrong, he explained the situation at work, and she gently reminded him to take it easy, knowing he often struggled to stop working once he started. However, Nasa dove straight into work and continued for hours until he suddenly came down with a cold. Noticing his flushed face, so Tsukasa spent the rest of the day nursing him, keeping a cold towel on his forehead. Later that night, she used a cool cloth to help soothe him, but as she dabbed lower down his dangled region, Nasa became embarrassed and asked her not to go any further to prevent turning his little John Cena into the Rock. That night, as they slept, Tsukasa held his hand, though Nasa thought he might be imagining it. She then hugged him from behind, telling him she'd been worried about him all day. Hearing this, he turned to her, and they shared a kiss. However, when he tried to smooch further, Tsukasa scolded him, reminding him to rest and regain his strength. The next morning, Kaname mentioned to Tsukasa that if she planned on attending the festival, she'd need to wear a yukata as a married woman. So Tsukasa bought yukatas for both herself and Nasa. As she changed into hers, Nasa asked if he could get a glimpse, and she allowed him a quick peek. However, he was completely captivated by how stunning she looked in the yukata, so he gave her a kiss, only for her to shove him aside, reminding him they'd be late if they got too distracted. Later that day, as they prepared for the festival, Nasa couldn't resist taking many photos of her. When they arrived, Tsukasa immediately wanted traditional tacos, and after eating, they saw Kaname and Aya working at a goldfish catching stall to support local businesses. Tsukasa proudly claimed she was skilled at catching goldfish, and Nasa tried to impress her, only to end up with nothing. Next, they visited a nearby shrine where Chitose made a wish for a happy marriage and for Nesa's health. She confided in him that while others admired his dedication, she often worried about his well-being and would keep encouraging him to take better care of himself. In response, Nesa hugged her, grateful for her thoughtfulness, and Chitose said she wanted him to live a long and healthy life. Soon after, their friends joined them to watch the fireworks. Nesa then shared that he had taken many photos of Chitose, which he'd never delete, even if they were a bit embarrassing. Surrounded by friends, the couple watched the summer fireworks, and Nesa hoped they'd be watching them together every year for the rest of their lives. What challenges await this young couple as a test of their love? Comment Ampa Lampa if you're eager to find out in our part 2. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this.